Hey, and welcome to Dating Dames V2. I'm Jackie, and this is my co host, Michelle. And whether you're newly single, divorced, or waking up to the possibility of love again, you're in the right place because, yeah, Dating Dames, we believe it's not about him, it's about you. And today's discussion revolves around the topic of getting swept away.
Yeah, and getting swept away can take many forms, but primarily what we want to talk about is this whole idea of the kind of emotional, like just overwhelm and excitement that you feel.
Absolutely. For some, it's emotional, for some, it's mental. And then for one of our colleagues, it was financial. So we've all watched or heard about the Tinder swindler. And what I found really fascinating during this Netflix documentary was not about the act of swindling, but that these women were all really intelligent. None of them were they were all by the means of being able to identify and explain and really rationalize what was happening. But what made them so easily be swept away was that rush and that fantasy and the possibility of what if. And of course, we look at ourselves and we think, that will never happen to me. I mean, I've watched The Tinder Swindler, I'm smart, but it's not about intelligence, right? It's about that craving and the hunger you feel to connect with somebody else. And it doesn't make you foolish. It makes you human, if anything.
Yeah, so today I think we're going to share, Jackie, I think you're going to share the story of our colleague who
Yeah,
she actually got involved in much more of a financially oriented, more perhaps in the vein of the Tinder swindler, and and found herself kind of questioning why did she get into dating at all?
absolutely. And so it happened to one of our colleagues who had been out of the dating market for a while. And she had decided that after listening to all of our podcasts, she was really enthralled, she was excited, and she decided, you know what, she'd set up a Tinder account and get back in the game. And that's exactly what happened. And she was really hopeful, really excited. But she met somebody who she had spoken to for about a week or two. And after a while, after exchanging lots of interesting, intimate conversations, he said to her, I'd really like to give you some money, but I need you in order for that funds to clear. I need you to deposit some money to a courier or something of the sort. And so she, believing that he was really wanting to do that for her, really wanting to help her and elevate her life, decided, yes, I'll go ahead and do that. And in the process, got scammed out of money. And it was quite interesting because we recently passed around an email from Tinder to say, please be cautious of scammers online and do not give anybody any money. What was interesting to both of us, and in fact, when we retold this story to each other, was not only the scam, which is, yes, it's a financial implication, right? But the fact that she wanted to believe that it would be real. And
Mm.
that's where you can so easily get swept away, right?
Well, and you know, the incredible intimacy that is
Mm,
created through the chat messages, you suddenly someone you're talking to multiple times a day, they're probably saying really incredibly romantic and sweet things to you that you've never heard or haven't heard for a very long time. And
yes.
and you're kind of thinking, well, they must really like me. And they may. I mean, in some cases, the people really do feel that way, but in some, it's a means to an end. And I
Mm,
think that's kind of the challenge. And I think we've also said that, yeah, it's so obvious in retrospect. I mean, I've
of
even
course.
had other sort of scam stories talking to friends. And from the outside, it's obvious. But when you're
Absolutely.
in it, whether it's in another case, a family member, was basically embroiled in a scam and this person got kind of caught up in helping them. And you're from the outside, we're all like, no, 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 that's crazy. Don't do that. And yet you're inside it, you feel it, the emotions are high, you want that
Mm,
connection.
you do. You want that connection, and you believe it to be real. You believe
Yeah.
it to be real in that moment. And you and I have both experienced it, right? I've had in a situation where I too was emotionally scammed, whereby I too was swept away. And and I was a part of that. And despite taking all the necessary precautions of, having video calls, verifying photos, having voice messages, there was this constant excitement and
Yeah.
overwhelm of what could be. And it felt very real in that moment until fast forward, we met each other and it was somebody completely different. You know, you two have had that experience. How about you share some of your little stories with us?
Yeah. I think, I mean, just a quick note. I mean, this idea that
Mm,
it felt real.
mm,
I mean, this is something you and I have talked about a few times, but it's this idea that, when you feel these emotions,
mm,
emotions are real, right?
absolutely.
Whether the emotions and whether this conversation is leading you to where you want to go longer term, or could even be a lasting interaction? That's the question that you have to keep asking yourself.
Correct.
So
Yes.
in my situation, it was not a financial scam. And in fact, though, we've never met in person. So in early December, I matched and met virtually with a guy who was visiting Thailand. And for
Mm,
various reasons, he was here for, some activity, and he was a little ways away from where I live, and our schedules didn't match. And so we were never able to physically meet.
mm,
But this began this incredibly intimate, interesting, connected conversation over the next month and a half.
mm.
And, it was so much fun. He had, you know, we would talk about, well, what are you looking for in a relationship? Because he, was talking about his ex, I was talking about my ex.
Mm.
He has listened a lot to Esther Perel, who, both
Yeah.
Jackie and I believe, we both believe she's like the guru of relationships.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
this was a
Definitely.
guy, a
Mm.
man talking about Esther Perel, a man who was emotionally interested. I asked him
Yeah.
at some point, he's like, oh yeah. I said, this connection, I don't know. I don't really,
Mm.
it feels like a lot. It felt a lot like a love bomb, to be honest. I just kept
Yeah.
questioning because again, it was weeks and
Mm.
multiple video calls. And at some point I
Mm.
said to him, I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that this is real. I used exactly those words.
Yeah, and remember, Michelle, both of us questioned that, right? You spoke to me about it. I asked you those very questions. Was it real? How often was it happening? How did you feel? And how did you feel?
I was like, ah, this is not my typical interaction with a man, even a man
Mm.
I was married to for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so there was that voice in my head saying, I don't know, I don't know. But I also said to
Mm.
him, I said, I don't know, I just can't quite believe this is real.
Mm.
And at some
And what did
point,
he say? What did he
well,
say?
he said, he was like, oh, yeah, I knew immediately. And I said, well, what do you mean immediately? And he goes, oh, in the, within 4 to 5 seconds of our first video call. And I said, 4 to 5 seconds, that's quite a long time. And he said, oh, I didn't even have my glasses on for the first
Oh
two. So,
gosh.
and so, I mean, again, it was just, he was engaging.
Mm.
And at some point after, probably 5 weeks or something, we started
Yeah.
talking about how would we meet and where would we
Yeah.
meet.
Mm.
And that meeting, we eventually worked out. I was like, oh, well, we could meet near where you live. And he's like, no, 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 no.
Mm.
That became a little bit of a flag for me. But
Yes, because that was
he,
red flag number one, wasn't it?
yeah, well, after the
Mm.
love bombing red flag or flag, it was
Mm.
just a flag. I won't say it was a red
Mm.
flag, but yeah. And that was definitely a flag that I had to follow up on.
Yeah.
But eventually he said, well, let's meet in France. I have to go to France to see my mom. And I'm like, oh, I love France. Let's go to France. And after another week and a half of discussion,
Mm.
oh, these dates, oh, my daughter is graduating. Oh, I have this with work. I have that. I can't go until blah, blah, blah. We
Mm.
settled on dates and I booked my trip.
And then what happened?
And then within about a week, suddenly the conversation changed entirely.
Yeah. The
And
energy was
this,
different.
oh, I mean, the messages were completely different. It was no
Mm.
longer long, involved, and exciting,
Mm.
deep conversations.
Yes.
It
Mm.
became, good morning, how are you? I have a busy day. Oh, good night. I hope you had a good day. And very
Mm.
quickly, though, again, being aware, I said, "Oh, this is some, what's happening? Are you, I've noticed a change. No, 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 no,
Yes.
no. I'm just busy."
Mm.
And I let that ride for a few more weeks. No, no, no. I'm just busy.
Mm.
I even gave him an out and said, maybe now is not the time for you to have a
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah. I
He's like,
remember
no, no,
that
no, no,
clearly.
no. I'm just busy.
Mm. Very busy.
Very busy.
Very
Um,
busy. Mm.
later, some
So,
weeks later, he came clean and he said,
yeah.
actually, my wife has asked me if I'm having a relationship, and now we're moving very quickly to divorce. Now, bearing in mind, I didn't mention this earlier, but his wife is the one that he, for a long time, referred to as his ex. But
Yes.
with red flag number one, I had asked him, is she really your ex? And he had admitted that no, they weren't divorced. And in
Mm.
fact, we're still in the same house, and the plans for divorce had not moved on. But, you know,
Yes.
so it wasn't like I was sitting there kind of thinking, this is amazing, perfect, we're going to get married. There was nothing like that. But I was kind of like, amazing yet. So anyway,
Yes.
now, shall I tell you? So now, where does he sit? We didn't meet in France. I'll just cut to the chase because
Yeah.
his schedule continued to change.
Yes, of
I
course.
went to France. I had an amazing trip. So happy I
Mm.
did it.
Mm.
And somewhere during that trip, when his plans changed yet again and yet again, he couldn't meet me for
Of
one
course.
day, one lunch, I decided that it was time to block him. Not because he
Yes.
was dangerous, not because he was scamming me, but because I needed to let go of
Yeah.
the possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really interesting because This is a great example that you've presented, whereby on a text message, on a video call, when you experience lots of commonalities, me too moments. You like Esther Perel, I like Esther Perel. You are, these are your goals. Oh, these are my goals as well. And they appear to be much alignment. That felt very real in those moments.
God, it was crazy. He even asked, he
Yeah.
said at one point, what are the things that you, what are the top 5 things you think we have in common? And
Yes.
he, you know, he sends me his list and I send
Yes.
him my list. We do it, you know, we coordinate so that
Yep.
they're at the same time so we don't cheat. I mean, it was like, oh my God, my
I
dream
know.
guy.
I know. I know. And I guess that is, of course, there is part of it that is very real for many people out there. But there is also the little stories we tell ourselves that we want it to be real, and we almost encourage it to be real. And when you think about what actually sweeps us away, it's like you said, it's those good morning messages. You look at your phone first thing in the morning, and their name appears with a little notification. And
And a
you
little smile on your face
and
when
a
you
little
see it.
smile on your face, of course, and excitement in your body when you feel it and see it. And then it's also the other thing of, it's easy to go to a different country or different city, and you have hundreds, thousands of likes, and you believe that, oh my gosh, all of these people are interested in me. But really, they're just swiping many different options and see who will bite. Or the text messages that feel so incredibly intimate, because they are intimate, and they're intimate in that moment between you and another person. And I
Who
guess you have to
cares?
ask yourself those questions, right?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, as we've said, you know, it is real. And to some extent, the hope that you bring into each of these interactions
Mm,
is what you have to bring. If you came into every date thinking, what if he's, you know, he's a scammer, or this will never work because, you know, he lives in another country, or
yeah.
what's the point anyway? I mean, all of that, if you don't bring hope and potential and a little and a bit of excitement,
Mm,
then why bother? I mean, there's just no point to the dating. You have to have hope.
absolutely. And
But
you
with
have to have
hope
hope. Go for it.
comes caution. I was going to say
Yes,
just a bit of caution.
absolutely. And also, you're asking yourself the question, was it meaningful?
Mm.
You know,
Well,
uh, mm,
what I was going to say is the meaningful question is again kind of, you know, it's a word that can have many meanings, but specifically, was it meaningful in that, you know, there could be 2 routes that you consider with this question. Is it
go for
meaningful
it.
in that, did I learn something from this? Did I get something from this? Was I excited and felt alive and suddenly saw a glimmer of what I imagine? And that can be meaningful. Or is it meaningful in the sense that, did it lead you in the direction that you think you want to go? If you
Yeah.
imagine a committed relationship, is it meaningful in that sense? Does it lead you in that or not?
Yeah. And I think the key essence of year when it comes to the question of was it meaningful, whether it be
Mm,
a learning, whether it be a discovery of yourself, whether it be alignment with your future goals, it is only you that can answer that question and
yeah,
associate any meaning with it. For us,
yeah,
the key point over here is be cautious, ask yourself questions, speak to a dating buddy, because that really helps mirror, reflect, and it allows you to question yourself, right? It allows you to question yourself, the reality of the moments, the meaningfulness of the moments as well. Let's talk about some of the learnings we've both experienced during this
mm,
period of time. And I think one of the big things for us was you can be a healthy skeptic, and it's important to be a healthy skeptic, but it doesn't mean you need to be a cynic,
yeah,
because you can be open-hearted and you can be clear-eyed at the same time. Ask difficult questions, because it doesn't make you cold. It makes you learn more about yourself, about patterns, about discernment, and it allows you to understand what it is that you really want out of the situation. So you don't want to come across as being guarded or bitter. Good heavens, that wouldn't be advantageous for you. You wouldn't place yourself in a good position. And you need to be self-aware. And I guess that's the difference between guarding your heart and abandoning it.
yeah. I think there's so much in this, in that,
Yeah.
you know, I think, you know, you've even said, you know, we talked in the past, or maybe even at the beginning, a little bit about this idea of love bombing. And
Yes.
at
Yes.
first, you know, if you're not used to someone being so engaged with you, and as we've said,
Mm.
many of us, it's been a long time, you might,
Yes, it
you're
has.
you're in overwhelm, but at the same time, it's so romantic and so amazing. And you're thinking, this is
Mm,
the potential, but you're not sure. But the question is, does it last beyond, kind of an immediate kind of, kind of the love bomb itself? Does it go beyond a couple
mm,
weeks? Do the actions, do the words actually mirror a commitment or a sense that it's going in the direction you want? I think
absolutely.
also that's kind of where your intuition comes into play. Like I said, I was constantly going, what about this? That seems a little
Mm,
strange. And to your point about the dating buddy, use your dating buddy because again, from the outside, when you're describing it, I think I was even describing to you the situation or to another friend, and they're kind of like, yeah, that's a bit odd, or that's a bit
yeah.
much. I wouldn't, don't put your whole heart in there. On the other hand, I booked a trip to France and I'm very happy I did. But that
Mm,
was something that it was not dangerous to me. And it was not something that, I mean, even when I booked it, I thought if he doesn't follow through,
yeah.
I'll be okay.
Yeah. And remember, we had lots of discussions about that, right? Before you booked your trip. How would you feel? Are you okay with something positive or negative outcome? Are you okay with all of that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
And
think
then we
another,
also,
oh yeah,
mm,
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, we've talked sometimes about, when you see these things and you're like, oh, am I being a bit picky? And,
Mm,
we've talked about that, right?
yeah.
What does picky mean? Is it our values don't align? Well, that's not pickiness. Does he show honesty or dishonesty? Or things a little bit questioning? Is he transparent or he or she or
Yeah.
whatever? But in my mind, there's no such thing as being too picky at a high level. Because again, remember, this isn't our first rodeo. We've been through
No.
this. We have almost all of us have wisdom from previous relationships and situations. If you're
Mm,
kind of picky about his tennis shoe or sneaker choices, I might put that on the realm of too picky. But, if he doesn't want to share
mm,
photos of himself, or he never seems to get round to meeting up in real life or want to do
yeah.
video calls,
Yes.
in my mind, that is not too picky. Those are flags and worthy of
Absolutely.
questions.
Absolutely. And think about texting, right? Texting consistency.
Oh, yeah.
It's very, very easy to create a whole world, almost like a whole world beyond reality, where you become a different person on a text message. And it's easy to hide behind a screen. And then there's also misinterpretation because you could send me a text, I could interpret it one way, but you meant it in another way. And then you meet the person face to face and you're thinking, God, the way we speak in text messages versus in-person conversation, very different. And then there is the most overwhelming, exciting online chemistry that we all get to experience at some point. But ask yourself the question, does it mean compatibility? Or is it
Mm.
merely that lustful, overwhelming chemistry that you feel with another person?
Excitement in a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And bearing in mind, particularly and I'm going to use myself as an example, I had been in one romantic relationship for a very long period of time. Having another man look at me, speak to me, desire me
Mm.
felt almost overwhelming, exciting, just it
It's what we're
fills your
looking for,
body. That's
connection.
right, exactly. And it is what you're looking for, but you also need to be cautious. And I guess
Mm.
that's kind of the main lessons that we want to share with our listeners this morning is that both of us have experienced this. Well, all three of us in our team, we've experienced this. And it is because we seek this connection and fulfillment and excitement um and the beauty of
Yeah.
connecting with another person in a romantic manner. But ask yourself those questions, double check with yourself, write it out, and just be cautious because what we're saying is be cautious, but don't close the door.
No, don't.
Don't
And
close the
and
door to the
that's
possibility of love, right?
this is the risk we take as dating
Absolutely, yes.
adventurers and
Yep.
expanders into this new universe.
Mm,
There's going to be risk.
yes,
There just is. In anything new you try, getting back on the bicycle, there's
yes,
a possibility you might fall off, but it's still worth it.
yes, absolutely. And this is an opportunity for you to reclaim your power after you've been swept away. And yes, we may feel a tinge of embarrassment. We may say to ourselves, oh, how could you have
Ugh,
been so foolish? We've all done this. But it's normal. And when you realize it's normal, do not continue on that wheel of talking down to yourself, berating yourself,
yeah, yeah.
because a valuable lesson can come out of that. And it's all the experiences, the learnings, noticing the patterns, when to say yes, when to say no. And remember, you trusted and you hoped and you were open to connection, right? And that's not shameful. The lesson over
No,
here isn't don't trust again. The lesson is trust your instincts more than his words. So if all he says is words, but there's no follow through, then darling, close that tab because you're way too wise to invest in something that's not heading in the direction that you'd like it to go. At that point in time, you free yourself, you open yourself, you create space for a person or a relationship that is real and that it
Yeah.
is everything you want. Any final words you'd like to add
I
before
mean, there's
we?
just so much, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much in this. And I think I get so excited because I feel passionate about trying to find the connection
Yes.
to the experience, to the learnings that you get along the way. And
Mm,
you might get a little bit of a bruise, but at the same time, I mean, like if I think about my experience, I have zero regret
mm,
about what I went through because in some ways it was this amazing, I lived this amazing fantasy for a
mm,
month and a half
mm.
of what it could be. And that
Yes.
there was someone out there who had the same idea.
Yeah.
And that actually gave me more hope. It didn't turn me into a cynic saying, oh, he couldn't deliver
Yeah.
on even his own dream. And I don't think he wasn't scamming me. I think he had convinced himself as well. But
Mm.
I don't have time for that. I've learned, I've seen, and now we're moving on.
Absolutely, moving on. Absolutely. And this was a really deep episode for both of us because it's touched us all emotionally, right? And if this has sparked something in you, then please do share it. Share it with a friend, share it with a family member, and help us grow our community of dating dames.
And if you're looking for guidance or some more anecdotes, come and find us on Facebook or Instagram at Dating Dames V2.
Until next time, keep embracing the adventure, trust your instincts, and remember, above all, it's not about him, it's about you.